12 October 1980, Göttingen. 1980, family attic. On one page, my father writes about guarding enemies of the Reich. On the next page, he writes about my first steps. The handwriting does not change. She writes it in a student notebook. She underlines, "does not change." It is the dangerous line for a family built on careful omissions. It will be the line that names what the post-war years trained them not to say aloud. Continuity. Domesticity laid side by side with complicity. The mathematics of a life in which the numbers don't add up and must be made to look like they do. Spring, 1945. Hanover. A man named Karl Fischer steps off a freight wagon onto a platform that no longer has a roof. He is 32 years old. He carries a sack, a tin mug, a folded letter of discharge. The British have taken the city. He passes a line of prisoners of war in blue uniforms moving the other way. The smell of coal dust and ash hangs above the tracks like a lid. He counts bridges as he walks, notes which ones are gone. He notes which facades still hold. Numbers are a way to keep the noise out, a habit from ledger sheets and guard rosters. Occupation reports from the British zone describe the city as 85% industrial capacity destroyed. Allied intelligence summaries list the Hanover Achlem and Hanover Stocken subcamps of Neuengamme as liquidated, survivors in critical condition. The files do not know Karl's name. They know the roll call's name. They know the roll calls he attended and the posts he walked, because those appear in the camp paperwork recovered after the guards fled. He finds his street. It is a corridor of absence. Windows without glass, rooms without walls. In the first months after capitulation, the arithmetic of shelter is cruelly simple. Walls equals life, tarpaulin equals chance. He sleeps in a cellar hole with two boards placed like ribs over the mud. A neighbor woman brings a bucket of thin soup. She is what newspapers will later call a Trümmerfrau, a rubble woman. She is 39, with muscles like ropes from lifting bricks and stripping mortar. She is not a symbol. She has calluses and chilblains and a ration card with numbers that will not cover a winter. Curfew begins at 9. The British military government posts notices on walls, offenders will be shot. Non-fraternization is the first policy. It is also the first policy to yield to pragmatic erosion. The arithmetic of governance in ruins is about calories and coal, not purity of contact. A corporal gives a child chocolate. An engineer from Manchester asks a German fitter to show him where to find spare belts. Everybody notes what is forbidden. Everybody notes what is useful. June 1945. The War Crimes Investigation Unit photographs mass graves near Bergen-Belsen. On the road between Celle and Hanover, German civilians are made to walk past the camp, to see and to smell what their authorities did. Karl is not in the line. He has a busman's papers from a strawman job in a warehouse. He will later say, "I was at a distance." He will say, "We knew there were camps, yes, but the rest was rumors." In the attic in 1980, his daughter will find a small, half-filled notebook from early that summer. On one page he writes, "We stood outside the fence, they ate soup." On the next page he writes, "Warmer now. Could sleep without boots last night." The handwriting does not change. The handwriting does not change. Autumn, 1945. The mathematics of hunger. Occupation health surveys estimate civilian caloric intake in the British zone at 1,000 to 1,200 calories per day. Work cards try to prioritize laborers who need more. Ration cards attempt to control scarcity with fairness, but black markets grow around them like ivy around a scaffold. Cigarettes become currency. A pack of Lucky Strikes will buy a shirt. 5 will buy a pair of shoes. In the Allied intelligence summaries, a new category appears: economic crimes. trade in food without stamps, theft of coal from rail cars, barter conducted in the open because the arithmetic of survival cannot be contained by chalk on a blackboard. Carl follows the new algebra. He trades a radio tube, which he took from a storage depot, for a bag of potatoes. He is not the only one. Hamsterfahrten journeys by foot or bicycle into the countryside to barter for food become routine. He pedals 20 kilometers with his sister's wedding linens in a bag. He returns with bacon and flour. He writes, "It is not theft if the children eat." He writes, "I did not even like the linens." He writes, "It is cold." The handwriting does not change. November 1945. Allied Control Council Directives 24 and 38 set the framework for denazification. The question is no longer abstract. It looks like a form with many boxes. Name, rank, party membership, affiliated organizations, positions held, publications, witnesses. The Fragebogen is a small census of a moral topography that never fit in rows. Millions of Germans fill them in. Most write that they were Mitläufer, followers. The system insists on categories: Hauptschuldig, major offenders; belastet offenders; minder belastet, lesser offenders; Mitläufer followers; entlastet, exonerated. The mathematics of guilt is a sorting algorithm written by occupying officers and German clerks who must keep a rail timetable and a food registry functioning while they sift. Spring 1946. Spruchkammer hearing, British zone. A provincial courtroom now carried by different winds. No wigs, no swords, just files and chairs. A 2-hour hearing is a year summarized. Many are there because someone named them. Many are there because their names appear on membership lists of organizations that braided into daily life. Karl's name is on a list from the Hanover Alarmkamp Guard detachment. He says, "I was transferred. I had no choice." He says, "I kept order." He says, "I did not beat anyone." 2 Entlastungsschulden character witnesses swear that he was a decent neighbor, that he helped with rubble, that he never spoke politics. The panel marks him as minderbelasteter, lesser offender. The fine is a portion of future wages. The disqualification from public office runs 2 years. The occupation report notes, necessary to return skilled personnel to administrative posts. The mathematics of governance in 1946 requires that men like Karl sit at desks again. The system needs stability more than exhaustive justice. It is not mercy. It is calculus. Winter, 1946 and 47. The hunger winter. Thermometers drop. Coal piles dwindle. The caloric arithmetic falls below 1,000 in some districts. The bread is darker. People scrape their tongues with spoons to claim the last taste. Hospitals report edema, a new vocabulary word for swelling flesh. Allied reports note infant mortality curves, cold homes, walls glistening with frozen breath. Trümmerfrauen continue to harvest bricks from ruins. Frost bursts water pipes. Karl sleeps in a coat. He writes, "No coal until Thursday." He writes, "I burned the chair." He writes, "On Wednesday, a train with Red Cross parcels." The handwriting does not change. In a school building repurposed for displaced persons outside Hanover, a Polish former forced laborer writes a letter to his family in Lublin. "We are told we will go home soon. There is a British sergeant who tries to speak our words." In the same town, a Jewish DP from Lodz writes, "The camp doctor says I should not think of bread all the time." German civilians pass the fence on the way to market. Sometimes they bring a basket, sell eggs for cigarettes across the wire. It is a choreography of hunger and shame. Contact with victims is incidental and in plain sight. A German woman sees a tattoo on a forearm. She looks away. A boy asks, "What is that?" His mother says, "An old thing." The arithmetic of denial begins with vocabulary. It becomes a ledger entry. We knew nothing. October 1946. More arrivals. Not DPs, but expellees. Germans driven from the east arrive with nothing in towns already in ruins. They come from Silesia, Pomerania, the Sudetenland, East Prussia. 12 million over 4 years, a number so large it is almost a rumor until an extra pair of boots stands by your door. A cattle car empties, a town hall records, local newspapers print new words, Vertrieben and Hilf, Neuberger. The arithmetic of rooms becomes a weapon. The Wohnungsamt housing office maps floor plans like war plans. 5 persons, 2 rooms, 28 square meters to be shared with strangers. Intimacy is conscripted. Tension rises. The new family speaks with different vowels. The old family calls them refugees with a tone. Windowsill arguments about stoves and pots become proxy for the old map being crushed and bent. 1947. Karl is offered clerical work in the Hanover Wohnungsamt. He takes it. He learns the arithmetic of doors. He assigns keys to families. He balances his own past with signatures. The post-war state lives in rooms and rations, in paperwork measured by centimeters when stacked. He is good at columns and lines. His handwriting is neat. He writes, assigned Kawecki family from Oppel to second floor left. He writes, argument about coal allotment resolved, threatened to call police. He writes, numbers are not the same as people. The handwriting does not change. In the files of the British military government, a summary. Administrative capability in municipal housing offices in Hanover, satisfactory. Resistance from local population to dispersal of expellees remains high. The arithmetic of expulsion is a national humiliation disguised as municipal allocation. A woman from Königsberg brings a photograph of a house she no longer owns. She places it on Karl's desk next to the form. She says, I will never go back. In that sentence, 2 centuries of history collapse and are folded into a folder. He stamps it. 1948, June. Currency reform. Paper that people no longer trust is replaced by paper they do. Deutsche Mark. New sheets arrive in stacks guarded by armed military police. Posters declare exchange rates. Old Reichsmarks are swapped for new. Every person receives an initial 40 Deutsche Mark, then an additional 20. The black market recoils. Cigarettes lose some of their power. Shop windows fill. The next day, shelves that had been empty hold goods sealed in waxed paper and tin. It looks like abundance because desire has been pent up for years. It is not abundance. It is a starting signal. The arithmetic of money shifts so quickly that many feel seasick. Pedestrians stand and stare at displays that have not been lit in 6 years. Alliances also shift. The Marshall Plan arrives not as a speech, but as sacks of flour with ERP stenciled in blue ink, trucks, rails, machinery, fuel. The last winter taught politicians the equation: cold leads to unrest, unrest leads to a different occupation. The Cold War begins quietly. It announces itself in procurement. Karl moves from the housing office to a factory job in a newly reopened plant that once made aircraft parts and now produces sewing machine components. The management calls it conversion. They call it survival. He files invoices. He learns the names of American suppliers. He receives crates of ball bearings paid for with counterpart funds. He hears a new set of acronyms, ERP, OEEC, and repeats them without inquiry. He writes, the new banknotes are clean. He writes, we made plan. We found Greece. He writes, some men back from Siberia. The handwriting does not change. 1949. A basic law is drafted in Bonn, at the river, in a museum, in rooms with heavy curtains and translators. A phrase is chosen, Sozialstaat. Social state. Ludwig Erhard argues for soziale Marktwirtschaft, the social market economy. It is an elegant attempt to hold two opposing truths. Competition must be free, losers must not be abandoned. The arithmetic of the new state is cautious. It aspires to be exact. It knows the numbers that define starvation and legitimacy intimately. In British and American reports, the tone shifts. Reconstruction proceeding. Public order good. Denazification winding down. The files note a final calculus. If a man is a competent engineer or clerk, and his past can be bracketed with the word Mitläufer, he is reappointed. 1951. Article 31 of the Basic Law resolves, in its way, the civil status of those who had served under the previous regime and were dismissed by denazification. The state must re-employ. Pensions are restored. The mathematics is political, not moral. The British and Americans accept. The Soviets denounce. The Cold War is the ultimate accountant. It assigns credit and blame according to strategic need, not according to the files. Karl's Minderbelastete status dissolves into seniority points. He becomes head of procurement. He hires. He signs on dotted lines. He checks boxes that must be checked to keep machines running. In the Bundesarchiv 30 years later, a folder will hold the signature that attests to his new appointment, pressed into paper by a hand that once unlocked a door in a wire fence. 1952. Lastenausgleich. Equalization of burdens. An attempt to compensate expellees for the loss of property left in the East. It is a national settlement with its own arithmetic, a special tax to fund payments to the displaced. Locals grumble. Newcomers say the sums are not enough. The files say such sums can never be enough. In the neighborhood, grudges cool slowly. A family from Brunn opens a shop. A local boy marries their daughter. A new dialect forms around the stove in an apartment where 4 families once cooked on the same iron plate. The mathematics of scarcity becomes the mathematics of credit. People assess each other by debt and reliability, not by party badges. Memory behaves like a debt too, accruing interest. 1953. Schoolbooks. A new curriculum. The past enters the classroom in guarded shapes. The more dangerous parts are described as a seizure by a criminal clique. The relief is domestic. We're not like that now. Teachers speak about rubble and rebuilding before they speak about victims. Bombing raids are shown with maps and symbols that simplify fear. Students copy numbers from the board, tonnage, sorties, destruction rates. The arithmetic of suffering is taught with neutral nouns. Karl's daughter, Anna, is born in March. The hospital window rattles in a wind that carries scents of coal and bakery. A young father stands with a bouquet. He thinks of ration cards and of the small hand that will soon reach for the bouquet's ribbon. His wife does not ask where he was in 1944. She was a girl then, in Kassel, in a shelter, listening for the whistle of incendiaries. She knows the world can unmake itself in an hour. She does not ask about rosters and barbed wire. The mathematics of marriage is made of subtraction. What you do not say becomes the floor you walk on. 1955. The Adenauer government announces rearmament and sovereignty terms. The Bundeswehr is created. There are parades for the new uniforms on roads where men in a different shade marched 10 years earlier. Some names at desks and on parade grounds are the same names from older photographs. The public debate is about communism now. The Soviets are the threat. The past becomes an internal border patrol. It checks the papers only when challenged. Otherwise, it waves itself through. 1957. The factory installs new lathes. The ERP accounts are almost closed. The Wirtschaftswunder, the economic miracle, is a narrative in photographs, smiling workers on bicycles, new refrigerators, a family buying a small car. But every photograph is a crop. Just outside the frame is a woman who cannot find her husband's grave, a man who cannot silence a noise in his sleep. The arithmetic of national income climbs. So does the price of forgetting. Public commemorations for those lost in bombing become more elaborate. Names of perpetrators are not carved into stone. Names of German dead are. On Volkstrauertag, the People's Day of Mourning, the speeches emphasize the dead of all wars. The list of who is included expands. The part about who did what in 1942 is a footnote. The footnote is not read aloud. 1963. Frankfurt. The Auschwitz trials begin. Testimony pours into microphones and out into radios. For the first time since 1945, the details are not just photographs on boards brought into town squares. They are voices. Some German listeners turn the volume down. Some sit very still. Many say it was far away. The state's attorney uses dates and warehouses and train cars and shipments of Zyklon to build the case. It is a mathematics of horror. Numbers that make rooms quiet. In Hanover, Karl hears the trial discussed in the factory cafeteria. He leaves halfway through his soup. The machinist at the next table says, "They will punish the worst, and then we can be finished." A foreman says, "We were all young." A clerk says nothing. His daughter, 10, asks at dinner, "What do they mean by camp?" The word sticks in the air like a moth trapped between the shade and the bulb. He says, "For prisoners of war." He says, "For criminals." He says, "It was not like they say." He uses the passive voice. Mistakes were made. He says, "It is complicated." He believes it is complicated. The mathematics of guilt in a family is not an equation to be solved. It is a series of evasions that keep the table level. 1968. Students in Berlin and Frankfurt chant, "Unter den Talaren, Muff von 1000 Jahren." Under the gowns, the mustiness of 1,000 years. A clever line. It is not 1,000 years. It is 30. It is also yesterday. The generation that chants was born into the new money. They accuse the ones who signed the contracts for that money of silence. The older ones say, "We rebuilt so you could stand there and shout." The arithmetic of gratitude and reproach never balances. The police use batons. The newspapers say excess. A professor resigns. A small memo crumples in an office wastebasket and becomes ash. 1970. Warsaw. A West German chancellor kneels. His name is Willy Brandt. He kneels at the monument to the Warsaw Ghetto uprising. He says nothing. His silence is the opposite of the silence Karl learned. It is not about erasure. It is about admission without speech. The debate in Germany is instant. Some call it weakness. Some weep. Some say, "He did not have to do that." Anna, now 17, sees the photograph on the front of a newspaper. She keeps it. She files it next to report cards and postcards in a drawer. She does not ask her father about it. She knows he avoids photographs. 1973. Bundesarchiv in Koblenz opens a set of collections to researchers. Files on denazification, Spruchkammer decisions, occupation reports. A graduate student from Göttingen writes to the archive and requests permission to see case materials from Hanover. He is not related to the people in the files. He is completing a thesis. He believes the numbers can tell the story. They can. They do not tell a whole story. Even if he counted every fine imposed, every month of disqualification, he could not measure the weight of a late-night confession whispered to a wife. He cannot count a look away. 1979. Television. A miniseries called Holocaust is aired. In living rooms where neighbors come to watch, because not everyone owns a set, people sit through episodes until after midnight. It is fiction, assembled from fact. Its arithmetic is emotional. Karl pretends to read the newspaper while his wife watches. He leaves the room, returns, leaves again. His daughter, 19, sits forward. She is used to numbers. She wants names. Her textbooks left out names. They preferred to measure steel output and number of bombs. She wants her father to say a name. She will not ask out loud. Families are coalitions. They have rules. The silent ones are the strongest. So she looks for paper. That is what her generation recognizes as authority. Paper with letterheads. Paper with stamps. The archive is a new cathedral. It keeps relics that did not die. She decides to climb stairs where dust lives. October 1980. Göttingen. Attic. The sentence that started this is written in the pale light that finds its way through roof tiles warped by decades. She is a student now, history and German. She writes, 1980, family attic. She opens a sewing box. There are letters wrapped in ribbon because ribbon is what families use to tie up the parts of themselves they cannot bear to sort. The diaries are small and brown and smell like machine oil. On one page, in late 1944, Karl writes, Postenwechsel, shift changed, advents. He lists names that are first letters, then abbreviations. On the next page, in early 1945, he writes, Anna took 3 steps, wobbling, laughed. He draws a small figure. The handwriting does not change. She feels something like vertigo. The attic is steady. She is not. She does something historians are taught to do. She transcribes. She notes dates. She cross-references. She takes the train to Hanover 2 weeks later. She goes to the Stadtarchiv. She asks to see the Wohnungsamt allocation files for 1947. She finds her father's signature on forms that placed expelled families in rooms next to displaced widows. She sees his neat columns. She takes the train to Koblenz. She is sent to a Bundesarchiv reading room. She requests the Spruchkammer file, Karte for Fischer, Karl, Hanover, and the file appears, brown, with a string around it. Inside, the Fragebogen with boxes ticked, the classification Minderbelastet, the Entlastungsjournis from 2 neighbors. There is a carbon copy of a British intelligence summary that lists guards assigned to the Hanover Achlam subcamp. She finds his name, the letters typed unevenly. She is not surprised. It is not a revelation, it is a confirmation. The numbers line up now, but the feeling is of a sum that keeps changing as she computes it. She returns to the attic after holidays. She reads more diaries. He writes in 1946, We went past the camp at Belsen. The British made them see. I kept my head down. He writes in 1947, The Kawekis have 3 children, but the room is the room. We cannot make it bigger. He writes in 1948, DM in pocket. Bought oranges. He writes in 1951, reinstated. He writes in 1953, Anna starts school. He writes in 1963, news about trials. Hateful work, that is what it was then. We were young, we obeyed. The law was the law. The handwriting does not change. She sits on a beam and reads about apples bought in 1948 with the same hand that once held a truncheon. There are no confessions. There is no defense. There is only routine. It is the most frightening thing she has ever read. She understands that evil will not appear in the archive labeled as such. It will be a column of hours worked and posts assigned. It will be a sentence that begins with pursuant to. It will be the mathematics of normalcy. She asks her father if he will speak with her. She chooses words carefully. She does not accuse. She uses the rhetoric of research. I am writing about denazification in Hanover. Do you remember the process? He nods. He says, it was all forms. He says, they needed us. They said so. She waits. He stops. The silence is a wall. He does not climb it. The reconstruction of the country stands around them like a new cathedral with clean lines. The Wirtschaftswunder is a geranium in a window box. It hides the crack in the plaster. The wartime generation learned that quiet builds safe rooms. The children do not trust quiet. They think truth has a sound and that they will know it when they hear it. Both are wrong. Truth is often written down in pencil. Occupation reports in 1945 measured rubble in cubic meters, calories per day, arrests per week, meters of track restored. Denazification files in 1946 measured guilt in categories designed to fit forms. Housing offices measured rooms in square meters to be divided by families. The Marshall Plan measured aid in tons and in repayments tied to GDP. The Cold War measured reliability in anti-communist votes and in staff lists that contained the same names as before with different titles. The mathematics of post-war Germany adds and subtracts people, papers, and time in columns that cross. A displaced person wrote in 1946, "We live near them. They pretend not to see us." A German worker wrote in 1947, "We have to move on. Otherwise we will never not be hungry." An Allied intelligence officer wrote in 1948, "The Germans are orderly to the point of denying their own weather." A Bundesarchiv file compilation prepared in 1972 noted public interest increasing in early denazification records. Requests often from students. An oral history interview in 1979 included a sentence, "I was not guilty, but I was there." The categories pile up like bricks onto a wall that keeps falling and being rebuilt. The mathematics of food in 1945, a city with 400,000 people and 200,000 ration cards, with some cards miscounted and many duplicated. A black market that transformed vouchers into bread, with a coefficient of barter that shifted daily with the arrival of a Red Cross train. The mathematics of guilt in 1946, millions of Fragebogen, tens of thousands of hearings, hundreds of disqualifications actually applied, thousands of reinstatements, because the system must run, and those who know how to run it cannot all be barred. The mathematics of displacement in 1947, in a district with 50,000 rooms intact, 70,000 people returning, 30,000 expellees arriving, a figure that fails even on paper, a number that must be solved by dividing walls with curtains, by pretending privacy is possible when it is not. The mathematics of the Cold War in 1951, a new army, a new alliance, the repurposing of old men, the conversion of files from one column to another, the exchange rate between compromise and stability changing every season. In 1980, Anna writes these numbers in the margins of her father's diaries. She sees dates as coordinates on a map that crosses a ruined street. She is careful. She does not cut photographs from albums. She writes careful quotations with dates. She does what historians do who are also children of their sources. She does not ask the question that cannot be answered with a number. Why? She hears, in her head, voices from the records. A Spruchkammer clerk writes in 1947, appears remorseful. Behavior since 1945 exemplary. What does exemplary mean after Achlem and Stocken? A housing office memo says, complaints from local residents regarding noise from expellee family playing music suggest mediation. The exactness of the words is a comfort that insults. In the DP camp, a nurse writes, child died of pneumonia, parents inconsolable. In Karl's died of pneumonia, parents inconsolable, in Karl's diary the same day. The thought lands on her. The handwriting does not change, because the hand believes itself to be one person. The hand does not feel what she sees. The hand is not split in two. The hand is a life proceeding. And yet, and yet. She takes his denazification file back to him. She thinks to show him the page with his classification, the box with the stamp, in order to replace the word complex with ink. She does not. She knows paper can be a weapon. She has learned from him and from the state. She puts it back into the string-tied folder and returns it to the archivist. 1981. In the post, a letter arrives, a request from a local historian to interview Karl about the early years of Reconstruction in the Hanover housing office. The request is innocent. The questions will be about partition walls and coal distribution. He says yes. He will be interviewed for the town's oral history project. He will speak with modest pride about allocation tables and about how they connected survivors to rooms. He will emphasize fairness. He will leave out the line about keeping his head down at the DP camp fence. The microphone will record his breathing, the sigh between sentences, which is the silence where the past hides. 1984. A new monument is unveiled near the site of the former camp in Hanover, Achlem. It is simple, a block with names. A speech is made by a city councillor who was 5 in 1945. He uses the word responsibility 3 times. He uses the word guilt once. He uses the words never again as punctuation. The audience nods. Some eyes are wet. Karl does not attend. His daughter does. She stands behind a row of teenagers in denim jackets. She thinks of pages of neat script and of a man who loved her completely and walked a fence line in 1944. The arithmetic of her feeling is not consistent. It is not supposed to be. She holds the words, never again, like a photograph that might fade in sunlight. 1987. A school assignment. Write about our town in 1945. The teacher gives them a list: rubble, rations, the care package, the good American, the black market. A boy writes about his grandfather's bicycle hidden in a hole under the stairs. A girl writes about her grandmother's hands. The section on Jews is 3 lines. The section on expellees is longer. The parents read the assignment at home. They correct dates. They leave other things alone. The curriculum improves slowly, pulled by those who insist and resisted by those who fear an unending penance. The mathematics of remembrance is not a straight line. It spirals and doubles back. 1990. Borders on maps shift again. Files breathe new air. The Cold War ledger is revised. East and West become one. In the East, their denazification was different. Their narrative hinged on anti-fascism as identity. In the West, their narrative hinged on democracy learned in market transactions. Both had silences shaped by needs. The new state must find space for 2 sets of numbers, 2 alphabets of memory. Anna is 40. She works in a museum. She arranges exhibitions where personal objects stand in for lives. A tin cup, a ration card, a child's shoe. She writes captions. She passes words. She worries about the distance between object and person. She refuses to call the post-war years miracle without footnotes. Her father retires. His hands tremble sometimes. In his notebook, he writes lists, groceries, birthdays. He sometimes writes more. He writes about a day in 1947 when a woman from Königsberg showed him a photograph of a house. He writes that he said the wrong thing to her. "You are lucky to be alive," and that the sentence was a betrayal disguised as comfort. He writes about the clerk across the hall who stole coal. He writes about the first oranges. He writes, "I remember nothing," and then he writes dates and times with minute precision. The handwriting does not change. He does something he has not done before. He starts a page with a sentence that would have been dangerous to say out loud in 1946. He writes, "I was a guard and I looked away." He does not elaborate. He does not absolve. He writes the sentence and then he writes milk, bread, apples beneath it. This is the arithmetic of post-war life in Germany. One line that names the past, followed by a list to live by. Carry both. Carry them upstairs to the room where the light is best. He hears of a neighbor dying. He goes to the funeral. He stands in a row of men with white hair and black ties. He thinks of a row from a different time, the alignment of bodies as a form of power. He leaves, he goes home, he sits, he opens the notebook again. He writes, "We lived because we agreed to be quiet." He writes, "Our new democracy rests on files and on forgetfulness. If either is taken, the house will tilt." He writes what he has never said to his daughter. He writes, "I am not asking for forgiveness." He writes, "I did not earn it." He writes, "I would like to say her name." He does not write a name. He cannot. He does not remember a name from the fence. He remembers a face without a mouth. He writes, "The mathematics of what I did is only this: I kept the key in my pocket and did not throw it away." The fragility of this inventory is not a failure. It is what remains when a life has been sorted into dates and boxes. The atomic units of a person's story are sentences like this. In the Bundesarchiv, his file sits in a box. In the attic, his diary sits in a box. Between them is the distance of a train ride and a generation. Anna reads his lines after he dies. She chooses not to publish them. She writes her own piece instead, a museum panel about Hanover in 1945. It begins with a date and a sentence.